How's it going, everyone? If you can let me know if the music is too loud, feel free. Last time I checked it, I don't think it was loud enough to really be able to hear it. I don't want it to be distracting or anything. Just kind of want it to be there because sometimes I just feel like I can't talk constantly. So just something to add in. Hope everyone's doing well. I got quite a few submissions, more than I expected. So I hope some people are here. Looks like they are, that people have submitted. Thank you for joining me, guys. Cool. And hopefully whatever this person's music is doesn't get crazy. I just kind of picked an artist that sounded good. Hey, Sam. Hey, Roberto, David, Eeyore. Payman, Colin. Hope everyone's doing well. Yeah, well, I guess we can get started. I don't really know where we're going to go in terms of what start from. Hey, Andrew. In terms of what we're going to do first or anything like that. But I thought we'd at least start with all the photos that were sent. So let me turn this down for myself. And please speak up if the music is too loud, because I am trying to balance it correctly, but it's really difficult because the volume on my computer matters, and then the volume that I input to the streaming matters. So it's hard for me to know like what you're actually hearing. Okay, that's fine. I think if I bring it down to something like this, we'll just leave it at that. And if it's not there, that's fine. As long as it doesn't get too loud, that's all I care about. So what I did was I've taken all the photos you guys sent me, and some of you sent me one photo, some of you sent me multiple photos, some of you sent me multiple photos of one photo, and one person sent a photo to just be critiqued. But the main thing that I did was I added metadata if it wasn't there, which was for the most people, of your name. So over here on the left are all the people that submitted. I hope using your full name was fine. I just used your name because it was in the email or the data anyways. So if someone here doesn't want their full name on there, just say something and I will remove it. But that was the only way I could figure out the best way to start editing images, for example. So if I click on, let's see, 𝐒𝐤𝐢 here, sent me a bunch of images. And the only way for me to figure out whose images or whose was to do it this way. So I thought this was the easiest way to do it. So I guess we should try to figure out what photo we want to start with. Let's start with just critiquing one instead of editing one. So the only person that sent me an image to critique was Bernie S, which I think down here the signature says Starg? Stang? I think it's Stang. If you're in the chat, Bernie, I apologize. But that's his name down here in the signature. Hope you guys can see that. This is a cool image. I'll be completely honest and say I don't feel qualified to critique this image. Mostly because I'm not a macro photographer. But sometimes it's really interesting to take the perspective of a different, genre of photography and, me added in, right? So the first thing I think about is why isn't it directly centered in the screen? Because it was very much a conscious choice by Bernie, right? And Bernie, if you're here in the chat, feel free to speak up and you can talk about your image. But to me, it's very clear that this image is not centered for a reason. Personally, I would probably have done this. But then it changes the weight a little bit. So, maybe it is just better original. I'm assuming there's a reason. Just putting it off just a little bit to the left. But I'm going to be honest and say I don't entirely know. This is a really cool image. Obviously, he sent me I want to say it's a JPEG, so it's compressed. And I think it's resized. So I don't know how sharp this was originally, but pretty cool, especially coming from someone that doesn't do macro photography. What do you guys think? I think it's cool. Macro stuff I've gotten ever since I watched if you guys watch Thomas Heaton, when I don't know why I said it with pronunciation like that, but when the lockdown started, he was doing some macro stuff for fun, and it kind of inspired me to try a little bit, but I kind of got so busy that I wasn't shooting photos at the time. I'd love to shoot more, to be honest. It's pretty cool. I always love I think my favorite part of macro stuff is the colors, because it's such a small focal plane that the background is just one giant color. Signatures on images. I mean, I put my signature on an image. The reality is, if someone wants to steal your image, unless you're really watermarking it, like over the top of the image, which some people do, that's probably the only way to really stop someone from stealing your image. I only put my watermark at the bottom of the image. But the reality for me is I put it down there, not necessarily to stop people from stealing it, because if they want to steal it, they could, but more or less to get people to just see my name if they come by an image. Yeah, so it says 90 millimeters, but I'm going to guarantee you that because it's macro, that means that the focus of the lens can get super close. So with a macro lens, here, I'll show you. For those unfamiliar, typically if you have a lens, so this is just a 24 to 105, but there's a minimum focal. I didn't say focal. There's a minimum focusing distance on all lenses. So that means that, for example, the closest I could get to the object is something like this, right? And that's the closest I can be able to focus with my lens. On a macro lens, they have super short minimum focal distances. So that means if you're shooting at 90 millimeters, on a normal lens like this, if I was shooting at 90 millimeters, I'd have to be pretty far away from it. But on a macro lens, you can be extremely close so that it creates that effect. The other thing you can do, hold on, I have to find them. If you ever want to get into macro photography for fun, and again, I'm not a macro photographer, but there's a way to do it really cheap. Your images probably aren't going to look as great, definitely not going to look as great as if you just got a macro lens, but you can buy these, what are they called? Extension tubes, which are just these little things that honestly, all they are, they're just air through them. So it's just a hole. And basically what it's going to do is it's going to extend the distance from, I don't know if my camera's going to focus or not. Hello? Eye focus? Okay, I'm going to give up. But all it does is extend the distance from where your lens image is being created to where the image hits the back of the sensor. And it just basically turns a zoom lens into a macro lens. Because you can zoom in super close. It's pretty cool. I was playing with it the other day, doing some photos for F-Stoppers, an article, and honestly, it's a lot of fun. These are only like $30, and it just turns your pretty much any zoom lens you have into a macro lens. It doesn't cost that much, and it's just something fun to play around with. No, so the metadata is just gonna, oh, you're saying this. It depends. If you're using, so these, I don't believe, do these have connections? So there's cheap ones, like there's super inexpensive ones that don't have any connections on them, meaning that it won't detect that the lens is there and autofocus won't work. The ones that I bought, which were only like $30, do have the little metal sensors on them so that when you connect the lens to here, your camera knows that it's connected to that lens. So the metadata would still show that lens. It's not going to have any idea you're using this. But in this case, I can tell the quality of this image is definitely just a macro shot with a macro lens. So these are pretty cool. If you want, I will link these in the description. It doesn't really matter. You can just search. You can literally just click on any of my gear links and just search extension tube set and find whatever you have for your camera. I think they're really cool because they're super cheap and there's something to do. Like Bernie actually said in the email he sent for this that it was just taken in his backyard, which I think is cool because it means you can just have fun with photography and stuff like that in your home, the backyard, stuff like that. Hey Sonic, how's it going? All right. I talked about macro photography even though I know very little about it. Too much. So let's go back and figure out what image we want to edit. So some people sent me images they had done an edit to. So I know that Sam here sent his edited image. So here's the edited image and here's the before image. All right. Sam, are you here? I'm assuming Samwise is the Sam I'm referring to, but just in case. Yeah, so you want to talk about this image really quick? I mean, you have to type it, but why did you? How did you add? What did you do for all the color? I think this is a cool. So it's interesting because when I first saw the original image, to me this is a pretty boring shot. No offense, Sam. Now, obviously, we're seeing the raw version, so a lot of the colors aren't going to be there. One way I kind of check to see what colors are like is I just kind of, bump up the saturation a lot and then see what moves. And we're just getting a lot of blue tones. So I'm going to take a guess and say Sam added a lot of this color in. All right, Sam, I'm going to be the idiot to ask, what does 7474 stand for? I think you told me in another stream. I think you said something about changing colors. Yeah, that's what it was. So you're saying that you used a radio filter and increased the temperature and the tint by 74 in both of them, and then you created this glow over here on the right side of the image? Am I on the right track? Okay. So what you're saying is, now before we do an edit here, let's get rid of this. So you created some kind of big radial filter like this, and then did 74, 74. And that's how you created this effect. Yeah? Oh, I see. Okay. That's cool. I think the effect, it's interesting. So when I look at this, I always ask myself when I look at an edited image if I can figure out what they did. And I will say I can tell when I originally looked at this image that the colors aren't as natural as I would want them to be. And again, if I'm critiquing your stuff, I don't mean any ill will by it. I'm just saying what I would when I look at an image. And the first thing I should say about editing images or being able to tell if they're edited or how they're edited, there's a ton of people out there that are quite famous or have thousands and thousands of followers that I can look at an image and really tell what they did to it. I'm not going to name any names, but it's not necessarily a bad thing to have that kind of stylization on an image. I think overall, the reason I can tell is so the reflections on the water, this could be real, in my opinion. So this light, this transition of light from here to here, could be real. However, the colors that hit the mountains here, I think give it away that it's a bit too much. And what I think I would have done is did exactly what you did. So have this radial filter. But then I think what I would have done, and you may have already done this, is I would have done 2 radial filters, but I would have range masked it for luminance, which I know that you've been here when I've done this before. And I would have brought it down to where I'm only going to hit that water with this range mask. And so now I don't know how you added the colors. I probably have to do some actual edits to the image. That's way too much to get the colors that you did. But I would do a radial filter with a luminance mask for just the water to make it more intense. And then I would do a radial filter. I'm just going to use the same one as an example. And do a luminance mask for just the foreground here. But then I would decrease it by a lot. So I would still have the color here on the hills and stuff, but very subtly, whereas this water would be reflecting it a lot more. So in terms of the composition, I've been trying to figure out how I want to write compositional stuff, because there's so much written ebooks, videos, stuff you can watch, and I hate talking about like the rules of composition, because I feel like I have an image that breaks it every time. So for me, I think any image can work. It's funny because I look at this image and I'm like, I don't think it's compositionally bad. However, I also couldn't sit here and say what rules it follows in composition, right? So your rule of thirds, there's not really a subject in the photo. It's more of just a view of where you were standing. So it's not really knocking a bunch of check marks of, your standard rules of photography composition. But I still look at it and think I like it. So that for me that's why it's always hard for me to write about compositional stuff. Yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't have things in it, right? So like, obviously you have this big lake and it leads your eye to the back of this image. There are things we can find in the image that do apply to the rules of composition, or things you would expect in an image. But there's also a ton of stuff that it doesn't apply, right? So there's not really a subject, like I said already. There's a lot of busyness in the photo, but none of that is really an issue, right? So for example, if I really, really wanted to get picky, and I was critiquing my own image, the bottom left side of the image doesn't really have anything that's doing anything in the image, right? Bottom right of the image, nothing's really happening. But that doesn't mean it's like, I still look at it and I'm like, I like this image. I think one thing you could do if you wanted to, and you may have already played around with it, is start the image where the water comes in right at the composition, like the bottom of the frame. Now you're literally deleting a house here and kind of cutting into it. So maybe something like this would be better. But again, I look at this and I think I like it better, even though this is technically dead space. And so is the bottom right. It's kind of like, I think the cool thing is that my eye leads from the back left to the back right with the water. Sorry, I'm trying to think of what I want to say. But also the land leads my eye that way too. But I don't think there's any right or wrong here in terms of composition. There's nothing to me that immediately sticks out and says, I want to crop this out. Yeah, so one thing that it does do is your leading lines, or where your eye looks, goes from, basically you've got a balance here, right? So a lot of your center of attention is over here in the brightest part of the image. And a lot of the stuff that doesn't matter nearly as much, or what your eyes aren't really going to, is over here on the left part of the image. yeah, again, I have tons of images I would look at and be like, this doesn't follow any of the standard rules of composition, but I think the image works. So it's always hard when people ask, what do I think about a composition? Because if it's obvious, here, let's use somebody else's photo really quick. Let's see here. I'm just going to pick something that looks standard if there's one here. Okay. We're going to pick this photo, which I think was done. Yeah, I put everyone's name up here so you can see it. So this image, even though we could critique it compositionally, for me is a lot easier to talk about the things that it checks off in the rules of composition is that you have a subject, the bottom part of the image leads your eye kind of this way. That's what this fence is doing, up to the Golden Gate Bridge. And that kind of leads your eye back to these mountains where the brightest part of the image is. So it's interesting talking about composition because I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong, and that every time I mention a rule, say a rule, I always feel like I have to have a caveat of, well, you can do this, but it doesn't hurt if you also do this. So I know that's slightly confusing, and I'm probably not articulating it very well. But I think overall, my question to you as the photographer, because you were actually there in the location, would be, what would you have done to make the image better? What could you have done while you were taking the photo to make the composition better from where you were standing? How much could you have moved? Could you have gone down the hill? Could you have, did you want the houses this much in the image? Did you want, those are the questions that I typically ask on an image like this. Because again, there's not really a subject. Like there's no big subject in this image. It's more of a landscape overall image. And there's some lighting, obviously, that you made. Yeah, we got some pretty great images that people sent in, so I'm pretty excited. So, Sam, I hope that answers your question of the composition. Do I think it's bad? No, definitely not. Do I think it knocks, is it standard, your typical, is this a good composition? I don't know. Because again, as multiple people have said, it does a really good job of leading your eye to a point. And I think that to me is probably the biggest thing in an image is, does your eye go somewhere? And I don't really care how it gets there. So even if you're not following like rule of thirds or leading lines or brightest and darkest parts of the image or anything like that, if my eye goes to a certain spot and that's where you want my eye to go, that to me says the composition is working. Sam will have to answer whether that's taken. Scotland. Thank you, Roberto. I clearly, when I read the message, focused on other things. So I don't think I'm going to go through and edit this image, Sam, just because I think what you did is probably better than what I could do if I sat here and worked on it, aside from that suggestion I made, which was going back and making 2 radial filters that you can adjust how much it's hitting the land and then how much it's hitting the water and balance it out a little bit more. So, all right. Well, since I clicked on this image, we can go through and do this one and talk about, let's start with the composition. So, Ihor, are you in here? Oh, I didn't even look at that, Ihor. Also, again, if I ever say a critique or what is right or wrong or bad or good in my eyes, I never mean anything bad by it. A lot of the times I look at my image and my own images and think they're terrible. So please don't be offended if I say something negative in any way about your images. John, the best way to do it is just zoom out. So if you're on the new version of Lightroom and you have acceleration turned on, graphic acceleration, which is go to edit, go to preferences, under here, there's a graphics processor thing. You have to have that turned on. You can hold shift when you're in the develop tab. You can hold shift and then scroll to the left or scroll to the right to zoom in and out. That's one way you can do it. Or you can have this tab open on the left-hand side and you can select a really small zoom. So let's say 6%. And then now that you're zoomed out, you can create radio filters outside of the image. If you want to learn more about that, the video that I did on, it's called 5-minute edit adding drama to your images, or 5-minute edit in Lightroom, something. I talk about exactly that. Oh, I thought he meant how to create it outside of the image. Yeah, there's just an invert button. Thank you, Roberto, if that's what you were asking. I don't know if you were asking about how to create the filters outside of the image, or if you were talking about inverting what you're affecting. Sorry about that. I just went into a big explanation for no reason. My apologies. Okay. Let's talk about this image. Oh yeah, that looks great. So let's start by composition. So 𝐒𝐤𝐢𝐚𝐥𝐬 sent me his edited image and his non-edited image. And personally, when I look at this photo, I feel like it's a little off balance, for me particularly. Now, this is what's interesting, is because when I look at this image, I didn't have anything necessarily immediate to say that struck me as you should have done this better. But 𝐒𝐤𝐢𝐚𝐥𝐬, when I look at this image, I personally think that just the balance of the bridge being so far to the right throws me off a little bit. Cool. Well, at least I helped somebody, even though that was not an answer anyone was looking for. No worries. So this image is great because it's got a lot of the qualities I look for in something I'd want to post or something I'd want to edit, in that the light is really unique. You've got a lot of mood. There's just a tiny bit of haze here in the background, which I really think adds to the image. And we can look at the raw. But again, I think for me, particularly, I feel like the balance here is just a little bit off. And I wish that, you know, obviously you're standing here and you probably don't want to go over this fence and break rules, although plenty of people probably do. I've never actually shot the Golden Gate Bridge from this spot. I think I shot Golden Gate Bridge from over here somewhere one time. But for me, I think the composition here is not, even though I use it as an example to point out leading lines, I think the balance overall isn't there. I don't know. What do you guys think? And I genuinely feel like if the bridge was just a little bit more to the left, or your perspective was to be able to see more of the bridge, I would like it more. And it's interesting. I feel like this fence, even though it's part of the image, I don't know how much it's doing for me in terms of, and I don't think I'm going to be able to crop this to make it look better in any way. I think really, I just wish that the bridge was farther to the left in the frame. And I hope that doesn't hurt your feelings, 𝐒𝐤𝐢𝐚𝐥𝐬. I think it's still a cool image. I might just post this to Instagram or something like that, but I wish it was a little bit more to the left. All right, so let's edit an image. I don't think it's a bad photo. That's not at all what I'm saying. It's so far to the left that, and to me, this is the subject of the image, although the colors in the sky are great. But to me, the Golden Gate Bridge is like, it's in the center of your frame. So it's between these 2 points. It is the subject of the image. And it's I want to see more of it. I would love to have seen this photo in this exact light with a little bit more of the bridge. Yeah, again, I think the fence really adds to filling in this bottom part of the frame, but it doesn't, imagine if the fence was here where it is, and then the bridge started here and went just a little bit more into the frame, and I think it would look absolutely amazing. Yeah, I know. I mean, I actually like, again, I love that the fence is here, but it's not leading it's kind of leading my eye over here, but I really just wish that the bridge was more in the center of the frame. I think that this space here, so imagine, and again, I don't know where you're standing, but if I could imagine moving a little bit to the left, you would cancel out some of this space in the bottom right corner, and you would possibly be able to frame the bridge a little bit more into the shot. Yeah, the colors are great. Would I say it's oversaturated? I think, depending on how you're styling your images, and it's all going to depend on the monitor you're looking at. We're all looking at like a compressed JPEG. So what's happening is I think that a lot of the data that's right here is just getting compressed, and you guys are looking at it through YouTube. But I don't think this picture is oversaturated. Take care, John. Thanks for joining. In 𝐒𝐤𝐢𝐚𝐥𝐬, I always feel really strange critiquing stuff because I don't know the area, and I don't necessarily know what you could have done differently, because I think there's great elements here, in my personal opinion. But if I were to guess, you were trying to be unique by having the fence line here, and I think you ended up sacrificing the bridge here, just where it is in the frame. And I think that's pretty much the only thing I would change about the image is if you could go back to that day and just make sure that the bridge was just, I want to see it. I wish I could see it. I wish I could see more of it in the image. So let's actually go through and edit one of the photos that someone sent. Not entirely sure which one we should do. If you guys have a suggestion, I can tell some of the people that are here. We can look at Roberto's images really quick. Maybe edit one of those. Yeah, I think the image is really cool. Actually, Eeyore, I don't want you to think that I'm speaking super negatively of you. I love the colors in this image. That to me is what makes this image. The color palette is really cool, and I just love pastel sunsets. This looks like, oh, this is actually probably sun. No, this is sunset west. Yeah. All right, let's take a look at Roberto's image and edit one of his really quick. See what we want to do with it. Oh, no worries. So I think we're going to work on this one. I think this one is, I think there's too much lacking here. I think this suffers from the same problem that we were just talking about with balance and composition, is that you tried to capture the sun, which I think is in an okay spot, but there's no subject in the foreground. And if you wanted this line to be here, so let's just brighten up the shadows here a bit, see what we're doing. To me, there's just nothing for, I don't know where my eye is supposed to go in this picture. And I think compositionally, something you could do that could be interesting for this if you really wanted to abstract, like make an abstract image, is possibly crop it to like super wide But again, I don't know where my eye is supposed to go in the image. So I think we're going to work on the other one. Hope that makes sense, Roberto. Overall, I think this image, if you had, I don't know where you were standing or if you were in the water, behind the water, but if you had one of the rocks somewhere as the focus in the foreground, it would have just made the image a lot better. But as of how it is, just as the composition, I think that it's just hard for me to know where to look. But in this image, so it's strange because there isn't as much of a, it's not like there's a direct subject, but my eye goes right here in this part of the image. So that to me says this is the subject of the image. And this looks like, is this the Dolomites? Yeah, this looks like the Dolomites. So I think this image is a better starting point than the last one, especially for doing a quick edit that we could do to make it look cool. I will say, no, well, let's just do an edit to it, and then we'll talk about compositional stuff. So the first thing I'm going to do, bring up that blue saturation. Although I'm going to check landscape, maybe get some better effects there. Yeah. And I'm actually going to not bring up the whites too much. I'm going to bring the exposure of the whole image down a little bit, and then we're going to use a radial filter to put some light on the image. Let me catch up on chat. Colin, I'll be completely honest. I probably think more about composition and photos while I'm trying to think about it and explain what I'm trying to say more than I actually do in the field. But I will say that when you take photos over and over and over again, those things just kind of come in naturally. Like you just walk up to a spot and you say, all of those things that I'm trying to articulate just kind of happen in your head without really thinking. So I darken this whole image, and then we're going to add a radial filter, just like I did for my Yosemite image a few videos a couple months ago. And again, it's the one about radial filters. That I think will work really cool in this image. Well, we're going to see, because I don't know how it's going to look yet, but let's see what happens. So what I'm doing, I'm going to reset this really quick and explain why I'm choosing to do this. And the reason I'm doing this is because you took this image and I could tell that the brightest part or the natural light that was hitting this rock is right here in the center of the frame. All this part's kind of dark. Over here, there's some shadows. And it looks like the light was hitting right here. So I'm basically just trying to focus that light and give it a more of a dramatic effect on the image. So what I did is I just brought the whites all the way up, and what that's going to do is not affect the dark parts as much, and it's just going to add contrast into the areas where this radial filter is hitting, rather than just me brightening this part of the image, because that just doesn't look natural. So brought the whites up a lot. Then what I'm going to do, I am going to bring up the exposure just a tad, but not a ton. Then I'm going to bring the dehaze down a little bit, and that's going to kind of give more of a glow to this part, but not too much. And then I'm going to warm it up just ever so slightly, so like 2. And then I'm going to play with the feather. This is going to affect how much is actually hitting the rock. So somewhere around there. Let's turn that off and on. That's looking pretty good. And so then I'm going to come back, bring up the shadows a little bit. I don't want so much detail to be lost down here. And then I think what I'm going to do is crop out this left part of the frame, because I don't think it's doing a whole... This balance is going to be a little tough, but I think we can get there. All right, that's looking pretty good. Let's add some contrast in. And then I think I actually need to bring up the whole image just a little bit more. We're losing a bit too much detail down here in the bottom. I actually think the whole image could be just a tad warmer. Now, this is going to be your preference. Some people like their images a little cooler. Some people like their images a little bit warmer. So it's really going to depend. Let me catch up with the chat here. Oh, Ryan. There's color profiles up here that Adobe added in, I think in Lightroom 8. I could be wrong on that. And I just selected Adobe Landscape because the default is Adobe Color. And from what I've been able to tell, the Adobe Landscape setting partially brings up the shadows, and it also does kind of what the blue saturation slider does. So I've been using that a lot more, and then I will fine tune with the blue saturation slider a little bit here and there. So this bottom part of the image is still a bit too dark, and I don't need to bring it up much. So I'm just gonna create a graduated filter here, and I'm gonna boost the exposure, and I'm gonna boost the shadows, but then I'm gonna range mask it for luminance for just those. Basically, I'm just trying to target those trees realistically. I don't really want to target much else. So I just want those trees to be white here. And now if I turn this off and on, it's not strong enough. I don't want to bring it up too much. I think that this tree was originally pretty dark already, so there might not be enough data there. But I think that looks a little bit better. Looks like it was taken with a Canon T6, so the dynamic range here was probably less than what I'm used to. But I think overall it's working. Let me catch up again. Nah, it doesn't matter what your camera is. I was just pointing out that if I were to boost these shadows even more, it even looks fine, to be honest. I'm just trying to be careful not to bring them up too much. One thing I'm noticing is that this is coming up a lot more than this one tree. And I think it's because this area was probably getting hit by a little bit more light, especially this tree right here. Which isn't a bad thing. I'm just trying to make sure that if this gets too bright, then it's going to take away from my eye, which is not what I want. But I think overall, this is a pretty quick edit. I'm going to add some dehaze here. It's going to really add some more drama to the image. That's kind of what I'm going for, is that dramatic look. Let's warm up that light again a little bit more that we created over here with our radial filter. There we go. That's looking cool. Let's warm up the whole image just a tiny bit. I'm gonna bring the saturation down by about 10. And I think this looks pretty cool. Something that I think you could do. So let's say you wanted to post this to Instagram, and you go 4x5, which is going to be your best selection for that. You could crop it like something like this. I don't think that looks too bad. So the before and after is here. I think that's looking pretty good. What do you think, Roberto? I don't know how you edited it, but obviously I would probably go through, add some sharpness, lens correction if you wanted it. You can play around a few more things. But overall, I think that it looks pretty subtle, but it really, my eye goes right to that mountain. I think the tree is the only thing I might try to balance out. Yeah, of course. Larger sensor, Ryan, is just going to, well, and newer camera is going to give you better performance in those dark areas. Yeah, it could look really good in black and white. That's very true. Well, I'll try that in a second. Damn, I don't know why you keep suggesting to add stuff, but I can't tell if you're being serious or trolling or just trying to be funny. Colin, you just drag the frame. So if I've got it locked in 4x5, if I just keep dragging it this direction and kind of forcing it to go up, it'll switch to the other version like this. Yeah, Roberto, this is a really cool image. Here it is in black and white. You would have to mess with some tones a little bit, I think. Something else we could do if we were to make this black and white is I think I would make another graduated neutral density filter, bring down the highlights here. And what that's going to do is instead of just bringing down the exposure all the way, the reason I'm bringing down the highlights is so that, again, it's going to create a little more contrast in the sky. And then you're really getting direct light there. And the cool thing about black and white that I think I'm actually going to make a video about is that if you mess with the color temperature of the whole image in black and white, you can actually find like a really good spot for how you want the light to hit your subject. And you can kind of play around with that. I think overall, this is looking pretty good. It feels a little bit too bright here in the black and white, but it's pretty close. Oh, there you go. Apparently you can press X. See, you learn something new every day, right? I like just fighting it. I love fighting the crop tool. Oh, well, thank you for the jokes, Dim. So if I were to critique this, Roberto, I think personally, and this looks like you probably were just driving, jumped out of the car, saw the light on the mountain and wanted to take a shot. So it's definitely more of a non-planned shot. You didn't have a lot of time to think about what you're shooting or anything like that. I think that if I were to try to make this image better, I would want a little bit less tree, so higher up, like standing on top of your car, like literally stand on the roof. And then not only will you get a little bit less tree, because if it was just stopped here like these do, it would be great because then you could see this whole mountain. That's pretty much it. All right, so this is a sound check. Is the music still fine? And then we'll go on to another image. Yeah, of course, Roberto. I hope you liked what I had to say. Okay, cool. Let me check my email and see if anyone else sent any images in while you guys are watching. You can feel free to send some in. I have more to go over, but I just want to make sure if someone's actually here. Okay, a bunch of people sent images in. That might have to wait till next time. I'll take a look at them in a second. It takes me a little bit to get them into the actual, into Lightroom. So, all right, so I think let's go back to here. Also, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I did add a little donation goal thing on the stream. I didn't know what to put it at. I just put it at something that I thought was probably far off, but still maybe reachable. So if you guys are enjoying the stream, you can feel free to donate, support the stream. But no pressure. Just thought I would mention it. The link is is down below. Do you guys, is there anyone in the chat that requests that they want to take a look at their image? Ryan, the email should be in the description on the stream. Yeah, Christopher, I will do this again. I I think this might be something that I might do weekly if there's enough reception. Number 3. Oh, is this yours, Sonic? Someone sent me like a 500 megabyte pano, and I'm pretty sure it's this one. But this is with your edits applied, I believe. Yeah, Colin, we'll do yours next. No worries. I have your name on here. So this is taken from Tunnel View, Yosemite National Park. Now we're looking at your edit because it saved the edit when you sent it to me. Now it says it's a pano. Was this multiple exposures or was it one? Also, Sonic, I'm going to. This means no ill will towards your photography skills or anything like that. But I'm just going to tell everyone else in the chat that has never been to Yosemite that standing at this spot is not. It's like cheating. If you get conditions, you can just point your phone in this direction and you'll probably get a really cool shot. Now that's not. I mean, I've shot photos from there that look exactly like this one. It's just one of those spots. It's just so cool. I think honestly, if you guys ever get to come to America, one of your main spots should be California, just because there's so much to do, like the San Francisco area. But specifically, Yosemite has this. If you drive through the tunnel, so basically what happens is you're driving into. Oh, someone donated. Shit. There's 2 entrances to Yosemite. Well, this part, and if you come through Tunnel View, what happens is you're just driving and you come through this tunnel, and then this is the view on the other side. And it is absolutely incredible. It's like, will literally take the breath out of your lungs when you pull up. And if you get some okay conditions, you can take some really cool photos with just your phone. Sorry, I'm trying to get to this donation. Thank you, whoever donated. Thank you, David. That's very nice of you. I don't know why I didn't hear the sound. It's probably because I don't have the volume turned up enough. Okay, so let's take a look at this image. So I'm actually going to reset your original. And I have no idea what happened here. But the good news is we don't need that info. So I'm going to crop. The first thing I'm going to do is just crop this down. I am going to remove the tree like you had. Keep as much of El Capitan as I can. I don't know if I'll keep that tree. So it's really going to depend. One thing about the crop here, this is probably close to what you had it at. One thing about the crop here is basically the decision of how much sky you want in it. And I think that that's really going to come down to pretty much if you're printing it, or like, for example, if you want it 2x3. Wow, I just landed on it, luckily. Or if you want it to be more square, you would probably just add a little bit more to the sky. Sometimes images have to be like a very specific, like I want it exactly right here. But thankfully with this image, you can get away with including a little bit more or less sky, and it doesn't really harm the composition overall, I think. White artifacting. Oh, I see. Thank you for pointing that out. Let's just... Huh. Hold on. Why won't it... Do you guys know why it's not painting in that white spot? Does it just... I guess it's just not... Doesn't actually have image there. So it's not... I'd have to open it in Photoshop. I'm not going to worry about it. We're just going to crop it out. Save time. Yeah, so what I think was happening there is that in Photoshop, that would just be white area that I could paint in. But in Lightroom, that was just nothing. That was just no photo, I guess. I'm not sure. So I don't think that there's going to be a lot I want to do to this image. it really depends on your goal for an image like this. If you just want a beautiful, this looks like it was taken probably sometime, if I had to guess, sometime in the morning, but far after golden hour. So the first thing I'm going to do is just add some contrast. I don't go strong yet on an image like this. I might go strong later, but looking at the histogram, we're definitely going to have to bring down some of the stuff that you brought down. I'm going to change this to Adobe Landscape. And the first thing I'm noticing is how blue all these areas are. So I'm going to warm it up a little bit, probably to about 5500, because it's very clearly daylight. And what camera was this on? Nikon D7200. Okay. So one thing right now that I'm looking at balance-wise is it's a little bit too balanced to the right. So I'm just going to bring that in. I think that's looking pretty good. I'm going to bring my blacks down a little bit. And then at some point we have to work on this blue. It's a little too blue still. So let's warm it up a little bit more. But I don't want it to be too warm. I pretty much just look at what time sunrise and sunset is, Colin, and that's when golden hour is. So my watch, for example, has sunrise and sunset on it, but you can use plenty of apps. Most weather apps tell you sunrise and sunset, but if you want to get really specific for photography, both PhotoPills and Photographer's Empress, which you can just search TPE, I think, have the data. I think you have to pay for them, but they're only like $10 and you'll probably use them for a long time for photography. But realistically, I try to get to a location before blue hour and in case I want to shoot blue hour, and then kind of shoot until the light looks bad. So wow, Jake donated. I don't know why I have no idea why I can't see. That's not the button I want. Let's go back to editing. No idea why I can't see the donations, but thank you, Jake. Donated $10. That, thank you. I don't know what else to say. I appreciate it very much. Okay. So what do you think is wrong with this image so far? For me, sorry, I don't mean to say what is wrong in the sense of the image is bad. I mean, what else do I need to fix, or what do I want to fix? And if it was me, I'm really fighting these blue shadows here. Yeah, and the sky definitely needs to be brought down some. So the first thing I'm going to do is desaturate the blues a bit, just because there's just so much there. I don't know why it's so blue. That's interesting. Because if I white balance even a little bit warmer, the foreground is going to become a little bit too warm. And you have to be careful on these rocks, because I've been here. I know what they actually look like, but yeah, it's definitely too blue. So like I said, oops. First thing is bringing down the blue saturation here. We might have to come back to this. Next thing, I'm going to add a graduated filter to the sky and bring down the highlights first, kind of get those where I want them. And then I'll probably bring down everything. And then just to help a little bit, I'm going to bring out a tiny bit of saturation, only like -3. Actually, instead of doing that, what we can do is just warm up that top part. Jim, wow, thank you. All right, guys, that's too much. You did not have to. Well, thank you. Thank you for donating. But please don't anymore. Yuri, okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for donating. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to sit here and listen to me ramble about photography. Make it magical. I think we did that with the last image, but sometimes on an image like this, I have to be careful. So one thing I think that's going to really help this image now that I'm looking at it is the whole outside of the image, like so down here where these trees are, and this part is a little bit too bright. So I'm just going to create a vignette using a radial filter so that our eye kind of focuses a little bit more on the main view of Yosemite here. So let's do that. Nope, don't want it inverted. Don't invert. And then we're going to bring down just ever so slightly. I think that's really going to help our eyes. I got to be careful here because I want a little bit more down here, but I don't want as much up here. It's going to start to look too dark. So I think what I'm going to do is do it lightly here. Bring down the shadows so I'm not affecting this cloud here. And let's bring that centered. And then what I'm going to do is do another graduated filter here. And I'm really going to bring this down some so it's not looking so translucent. There we go. I think that's looking pretty good. And then can bring down the highlights a little bit more overall. We still got to deal with, I think this is still a little too blue. Oh, Roberto, thank you. Thank you for checking in. You need to move back to New York so you don't have to sleep every time I'm streaming. Thank you for coming and thank you for sitting in your image. Yeah, I mean, if I switch it to black and white, this could also look really good. One thing I try to do though is that sometimes I try to save images by converting them to black and white. Oh, thank you, Sonic, for the $5 donation. I don't know why maybe the donation goal or alert box is working and I can't hear it and it's happening and I don't see it. Yeah, so back to the black and white thing. I try not to use black and white unless I either shot for black and white or the image just doesn't work without it. And in my opinion, the colors in this image are really nice, but a lot of Yosemite does work with black and white. For example, if I turn this to black and white and then just brought down the blues and then brought down, it's usually yellows for greens, something like this, you can get a pretty cool image. Of course, you guys can't see that, but you get a really cool image in black and white really quickly. But back to color, just because that's what we're focusing on. I'm going to bring down the saturation a bit more. Something I really want to do, because it is hazy right here, and I think that's what's causing a lot of that blue. So I'm just going to create a radial filter here. Make sure that it's affecting that area. I'm going to dehaze. Now this is going to increase the blue a little bit more. But I'm going to warm it up to kind of counteract that just a little bit. Oh man, that's helping a lot. Let's take away the feather so it's... Oh, that's not doing it. I'm trying not to affect those clouds too much. I really only want to affect... Here, let's try to range mask it and that might help. Really only want to affect that mountain, which I think is the going up to Half Dome almost right there. This is probably pretty close. I got to be subtle here. But what's happening... Let's try to zoom in so you guys can see it a little bit better. What's happening when I'm doing this is we're actually fixing the shadow area to look a little bit more color matched to the area that's in front of it. Because I think the reason it's looking so dramatic color shift is because they're right next to each other. And as I'm increasing the temperature here, it's definitely helping a lot. I kind of want the shadows to be darker though, so it doesn't look as hazy. I think that looks... No. We're pretty close. I don't think that needs to be as strong. So if I delete this and undo, I think that that really helped that spot a lot. Yeah, the only problem with range masking color there is it's such a light blue that I think it's going to hit the clouds, and I'd rather just focus on the shadow because that is easier for me to target. I think the other one probably would have worked too. So I think that looks much better. Just trying to control that little part there. I'm still trying to get the balance of the photo right. I mean, this is a very standard shot of Yosemite, so it's not too hard. I think overall we're pretty close. Let's go back to medium. Dehaze the whole thing. Now when I dehaze, it's obviously going to increase the saturation and saturate those blues a little bit more. Counteract, I'm going to remove some saturation, remove a little bit of those blues. I'm looking at the sky here. I don't want it to look too translucent blue. So the only other thing I'm noticing is this little spot here is just a tad too bright, I think. So again, I'm going to use a radial filter just to quickly edit this. And we're going to range mask it just so I'm only hitting that spot. This might be difficult. Let's see what we can do. No, it looks like we can hit it. And then I'm just going to bring the highlights down. Maybe that's not going to work. I'm barely touching it. I just didn't want it to look so shiny. I think overall this looks pretty good. We can add some sharpening in. And I think that's good. So if we take a look at the image you sent me. Okay, scrolly wheel. This is what you sent me, I believe. And to me, after clicking on it, now again, my eyes were adjusted to the image we just edited. This looks too green and teal to me. That could have been what you wanted. I'm not sure. Sonic. But personally, I think the one we just did looks a lot more natural. Oh, it's okay. You may have reset it, but this is how it came, and it definitely is edited, at least in some form or fashion. This is how I imported it, at least. And you've got a bunch of calibration stuff here. Now, again, you may have done that for a specific, like you were doing something specific. That's a pretty tough question to answer. When does an image look fake? It depends. So are you trying to make an image look more ethereal? Are you trying to make the image look more accurate to when you were there? Are you trying to make the image... It's tough. I actually don't mind this crop either. Actually, if we add this tree in, kind of like right there maybe. This is kind of cool. You've got... well, aside from this part that I would have to Photoshop fix, but that's not bad either. I kind of like the framing with the tree. But it's interesting, the whole conversation of how do I know an image looks too processed and stuff. And it's a tough question because the majority of people that see an image don't know much about photography. So if I show an image to my friends, they're going to be like, oh my God, this is so amazing. And then I show them, you know, how much was edited, and they're like, whoa, that's not how it's, you know, looked originally. And I think I'm going to talk about this a decent amount in my, well, I'm at least going to mention in my Instagram video that our self-worth and our images that we kind of put into the work that we do when we post something online, it's pretty accurate to say that an image, if it if it's bright and colorful and has like a lot going on, you're going to get more likes on an image like that than a more subtle image that could be better photography wise, but it's much worse to draw your attention. So I'll just make a quick example. If we take a look at Roberto's image from before that we edited, that's not as colorful. That's a little bit withdrawn in terms of it's a high contrast image, and it's not as in your face as, let's say, the image that we looked at before, like this one. In my opinion, an image like this is going to get far more attention on social media than an image like this. Specifically because one is more colorful, one looks, when you're scrolling, it catches your eye more. And I'm going to bring this all back to your original question of how do I know when something looks fake, or what is the limit? And like I said, most people, most viewers, most people following you on Instagram that are just following you because they like your photos, they're not going to know the difference between like an HDR image that looks completely over edited versus a image that you may have spent hours on that looks more accurate to the scene. So realistically, in my opinion, it all comes down to what you want it to look like. So if you want an image to be really saturated, if that's the style you're going for, then you should do that. Personally, I try to balance my images. There's some images that I have that are older that I look at and I'm like, I did way too much and I wish I could go back and bring it back some. So it really just depends on the images you're trying to edit. So anyways, to finish up this image, which I think we're pretty much done with, for a nice standard Yosemite shot, I'd probably have to come back with fresh eyes. I think the saturation needs to come down just a little bit more. And like you just said, orange UAV, the black and white looks really cool. But this is a completely different edit. I'd have to change the color balance a little bit, play with some stuff. But I do think Yosemite in black and white is fantastic. Let me see. Let's see. Really quick. I can bring up, I think I have one photo in here from Yosemite. Oh, I have a few. So this photo is from Yosemite during the winter. I went there 3 years ago. I guess we're coming up on. But like I said, Yosemite can be like cheating. This is also taken from tunnel view. See if I can get this to look right on your guys' screen. And this was just some really dramatic light. I think I posted a video on editing one of the photos from this time, but this is an image that does look good in black and white, but I didn't, the reason I brought this one up was because I didn't convert it because I liked the tones of El Capitan. Even though I don't think they're necessarily adding all that much for the photo, there's just something about the tiny bit of color that's in here that I liked. Yeah. I mean, Yosemite is an absolutely stunning place. All right. Let me, I'm going to take a 5-minute break to try to get some of these other images into Lightroom. And I will be right back, if that's okay with you guys. I'm going to try to get these in and get them ready to see if we want to edit those. If you guys are in the chat for the people that just sent me images, and we'll go from there. Cool. I'll be back. Yeah, Sonic, let me know, what did you think of the edit we did? I don't think it's anything crazy. Again, it's not like I added drama to the image or really changed much about it. I think we just made it look like a good standard Yosemite picture, which I think is what you captured, to be honest. All right, I'll be back. All right. I think I got most people's stuff imported. Someone sent me 4 images from FBG Media, but I don't know who that is. Oh, Philippe. If you're in the chat, I didn't add your images yet because I didn't know who you were. Colin, sure. Yeah, we'll start with yours. Welcome back. Let's see. Sorry about that. I just need to take a little break, get those images in there, and we can go from here. Colin, let's take a look at yours really quick. So I might not edit these, but I at least want to talk about them. Now, you sent me 2 images, and I think they were both from your iPhone. And so my question to you when I look at images like this is, what was your goal in this image? I know that you specifically, you've been on a couple of my streams and you've said that you're just starting out. So my question here was, what was your goal in this image? And that to me is always the point of, I always ask a lot of beginners because a lot of the times they don't know what to take. Like what the difference is taking just a picture walking on a hike of just something that they see that's pretty and taking a picture that they plan on editing and extensively, you know, possibly printing it, posting it to Instagram, that kind of thing. So for me, when I see this image, and again, this is just my critique, is this just looks like a photo that you took while you were walking because you like the view. That's what I see when I see this image. And I don't mean anything bad by that, but I don't see any intention in the image you took. What I mean by that is it just doesn't seem like anything in the image. I don't have anything to look at. I don't know what I'm supposed to be looking at. And overall, it doesn't look like there was any, when you took your camera out to take the image, it's not transferring to me what your intention was with the photo. And the reasons for that are the entire bottom half of the image is just some snow and some grass. There's a lot of distraction in the middle part of the image. And the city here is what I'm guessing is the focus of the image and why you took it. But it's also, it takes up almost the smallest part of the frame. So I hope saying that in the nicest way possible enlightens you to think more when you take your camera out to ask yourself, what are you shooting and why are you shooting it? If you're shooting it for photography. So if you're just, so I have tons of images like this myself. And if you're just taking images for memories, taking images because you were on a hike with your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whatever, you were out by yourself and you just liked the way it looked that day and you just wanted something for your memories, this is fantastic. But when I look at this in terms of photography or critiquing for photography, I don't see what you were trying to accomplish with it. And I hope that makes sense. So with that said, we'll probably move on to the next one. You also submitted this image, which I think I'm assuming is, I see. Yeah, so if we went back to this, I genuinely think if your focus was the city, I would want way more, like just way more of a focus on the city. So something like to get rid of all of this stuff that's in the frame that's not doing anything for the image. And again, I don't have the full image, you have it, but just cropping something like this gives me a much better sense of what I'm actually trying to look at. I still think that the foreground and stuff is far too distracting. And to me, it just looks more like a snapshot than it does look like a photo that you took with intention. And I hope that's not offensive. It just doesn't scream to me that, you know, for example, you could have walked up to right here and held your phone over these brushes and then snapped the photo of the city, for example. And this photo of your friend, girlfriend, person has a lot of compositional elements in it that are good. But it's also the mood here doesn't do it for me. So it obviously looks like an overcast, colder day. And that's fine. Sometimes an image without light or without color is okay. But it doesn't, this just, again, feels like a snapshot to me. I do think that there's more intention here. Like, obviously you have leading lines. You have a subject in the top part of the image. That's this bridge. And you have the line that the person is standing on. And that leads my eye right there. And the person is also pretty close to your rule of thirds line if you're trying to follow those rules. But I just don't feel a lot for the image. It doesn't seem like, it again just seems like you were walking around and this was a snapshot, a practice shot. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I take practice shots, snapshots. I take shots during the worst parts of the day so that I can go back again and try to photograph them during the best parts of the day. Scouting locations specifically for landscape photography is important. So like, for example, whoops, that was not the button I wanted to hit. For example, okay, this image could have looked way better at like sunrise or sunset. Yep, I don't care what you take it on. I'm just classifying it as a snapshot because that's what it looks like in terms of intention. So I hope that answers, and I think the best thing you could do, because I know you're still new to photography, is take your camera out and just think about what you're shooting. Don't take a picture because it looks pretty to you. Don't take a picture because something looks special. I mean, you should, but then think about what you're trying to shoot. Everything in the frame. What's in the frame that should be there and what shouldn't. So when you take this is the best way that I can explain it when I explain to new people that are learning like photography on their phone, is when you take out your phone, treat that image that you're about to take like it's a slide of film. As in, you can't just take it 1,000 images. You only have 4 images. So you have to be very deliberate on those 4 images that you're going to take. And I think that really helps disconnect the fact that you're using a phone with reminding yourself that you're trying to learn photography. So that's my advice on those. Okay, let's go on to Ryan. We'll take a look at one of your shots. Guys, feel free to, if you're in the chat and I have your name up here, say something, because again, I'm trying to prioritize people that are here. So if you're here and want to see your image, you can just say a number. They should be in the same order. We're going to take a look at Ryan's. Ryan, I only loaded 3 of the 5 you sent me. That's when I asked if you had a specific one you wanted me to look at. Okay. So, Ryan, these are going to follow the same, in my opinion, these are going to follow the same critique as what I just told Colin. In that, so this looks like more of a deliberate shot. Because you have some stuff out of focus, it's very clear that you were trying to take likely some photos of waves, something along those lines. But this to me looks like, I don't know what the intention of the shot was. Oh, it should have let you post a link, Ryan. I think if you're subscribed, it should let you post a link, and I'm assuming you're subscribed, so I'm not sure why. The one I didn't load with. Well, I told you to tell me which one you wanted me to look at. Here, Ryan, tell me the name of the file, and I'll download that one and reload it. We'll look at another one while I'm doing that. It's okay. Dim, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add someone surfing in this shot. How does that sound to you? Maybe a moon in the background. Just Photoshop it right in. And don't be sorry, Ryan. I just think it's funny that you're like, Oh, you didn't load the one that was my favorite when I asked you which one you wanted me to look at. Oh, yeah, we can add some sharks. Charlie, the shots... Oh, God. The how to send me photos is down below if you're asking seriously, but considering I know you in real life, please, no inappropriate photos. You can... Please. A dog walking on the beach. Okay. Ryan, tell me the file name and we'll take a look at that one. So let's go on. Yuri, I think you mentioned your shot, which I think you said was 28. So I'm not going to edit this shot because you sent me a PNG, meaning this is not the raw. I'm assuming this is your edit. So if you don't mind, we'll just talk about it. So what's really cool about this shot, in my opinion, is the layers. I think that's the strongest part to this image. But I will say I think there's too much sky. Yeah, well, I guess depending on your upload, you could have sent me the raw. Someone else sent me like a 0.5 gig file, which I know will depend on your upload speed. So something you could do is I think you can export the raw image you have as a DNG, and it'll still keep a lot of the data, but it should make it smaller, I think. A deer one? Manny, if you sent me an image with a deer, I don't think I have it. All right. So I think overall, the image feels just a tad too blue. Just a little bit. So I'd probably bring the blue down just a little bit. And then I would probably crop it some to where the clouds are right in the top. And then I might get rid of this part of the frame to see what this looks like. And in my opinion, like I said, it's the layers of these mountains that are the interesting part of this image. I don't think that this is a particular like special part of the day. Looks like this was just taking sometime midday, something like that. So Scram, you can send any, and don't, you just send one of your photos. You don't need to, as long as I'm not going to hurt your feelings by saying stuff about it. So overall, Yuri, I think that this shot, honestly, this shot might look really cool in black and white. I think that if I had the raw and then I could darken the sky and get the layers in the foreground. Actually, what is it? I'm curious what this just looks like this. Now remember, this is a PNG, so I don't have a lot to edit here, but I feel like this could be a cool image just in black and white. Seems like we have a lot of data here in this PNG, so that's nice. I think overall the cool part of this image is the layers. I will say in terms of composition, there's not a single focus for my eye, which is okay. But I think this image could be stronger if the layers in the image lined up a little bit more. And what I mean by that is all these layers in the background, they cascade, but this layer in the foreground has all these trees on it. And it can work. I just think at a better part of the day with more shadows here, it would look really good. Yeah, David, you can send me a photo now. I've got my email open. All right, Ryan, I'm going to download your image now and try to get it in here. Yuri, I hope that was an okay critique. I think overall, again, I think this comes back to the same thing we were talking about before, which was intention. And I always ask people when they send me images or when they want me to look at their images, what their goal was for the image, what they wanted to capture. And then usually by their answer, we can kind of hone in and figure out what is good and what's bad about it. Because if somebody answers, oh, they just wanted to capture what was in front of them, well, that works sometimes, but a lot of times it doesn't for photography. You got to be a little bit more intentional with your photographs, because that's really going to bring your stuff to the next level. Is taking photos that going from photos that look like snapshots that I could just pull off on the side of the road, take out my phone and take the photo, and then taking photos that look like they have more intention in them. And there's definitely a fine line between the two. So, and I'm not saying that you took this like a snapshot. I'm just saying in terms of when I ask about critiques and stuff like that. So, all right, let me get this image going. If you guys want to submit images, the link is in the description. And if you want to support the stream, you can, but don't feel obligated. All right, I'm syncing up Lightroom now so we can take a look at Ryan's image. That was his favorite, even though I asked him to tell me which one his favorite was. Okay. Also, next time around, and I'll probably add this to the requests, is that people can send in their Instagrams and stuff like that, and I can have that as their name rather than their actual name if they wanted that. Although, I think, 𝐒𝐤𝐢𝐚𝐥𝐬, you sent me your Instagram, and then I clicked on you and realized you weren't following me. Which, I got my eyes on you, sir. Ryan, you did not, dude, you didn't have to donate anything, man. It's not any trouble at all. 𝐒𝐤𝐢𝐚𝐥𝐬 is never going to come back and show his face here again. But I had to point it out because I thought it was funny, because he was like, hey, you know, if you put people's Instagrams up, here's mine. And I was like, oh, let me click on him and check out his photography. And it was like, oh, he's not even following me. Look at this guy. I don't really care. I genuinely don't care. I don't care about Instagram. I have my handle and stuff up here, mostly for communication. That's usually what I use it for. So I just thought it was funny. All right. Ryan, thank you for the donation, but it was no trouble at all, my friend. Let me bring this back up. All right, so this is the image you sent. So this looks like it was just taken midday. And sorry, one second. No one has to follow me. I'm actually feeling really bad that 𝐒𝐤𝐢𝐚𝐥𝐬 hasn't said anything since I called him out jokingly. But no one needs to follow me. I just thought it was funny. So again, this image to me looks like a test shot, a snapshot, which I think you said it was. And I think you said that you were just shooting some test shots. Thank you, David. Divide? I'm sorry. I said David and then I saw the E, so I'm American. I'm really terrible with pronunciations. So this looks like a snapshot to me. And I think that's what you said it was. But it looks like it was taken midday, and you were just trying to shoot some waves. Now, what I assume was going on is that, Ryan, are you new to photography, or are you just trying to learn landscape photography? A lot of the times, if I showed you my first shots, the first year or two I was shooting, a lot of the times I was shooting with different shutter speeds to see what would happen with different shutter speeds. I was shooting just all kinds of stuff. I was never shooting with much intention in terms of like the lighting. I wasn't waking up for sunrise and I wasn't waiting around for sunset. And I was just trying to, I don't know, shoot pretty stuff, pretty much. And that's kind of what this looks like to me. So I hope you're not offended by me saying that. And there's totally nothing wrong with that. But overall, I think that even if Oh, okay. That makes sense. So overall, I think that this image compositionally, let's just start there, because that's, I mean, regardless of any of the settings, regardless of the sun, regardless of the light, composition to me is not balanced. So even if we fix obviously the horizon line, which is, for me, the balance here, actually after doing that, it's not as unbalanced. You've got this dark rock in the foreground. You've got this, what I'm assuming is a cliff on the right-hand side, and our eyes kind of go to the middle of the image. But overall, I think that I don't know what I'm, like, is the subject the waves? Is that what I'm trying to look at? And everything is the same, almost the same brightness level outside of the shadows where this rock is. Oh, I see. Well, it's interesting because if you sent me an image that you had edited and kind of guided me on what I was supposed to be looking at, that's totally different than me looking at a raw image. And what I mean by that is when you send me the raw image and it's unedited, all you've done is shown me what you thought you were trying to take, like while you were in the field. And if I did that with my images, for example, if I just brought up all my raw images, some of them are not going to do a good job at showing what I'm trying to show to people, where to bring their eye, anything like that. It's not going to show up until I do the edit. So, yeah, no, I know. So what that means is a lot of the times your intention with the photo comes in the edit. However, when you're sending me raw files and I'm critiquing what you're trying to show me based off the raw photo, meaning it's not cropped or anything, that to me says that you could have done a better job in the field, unless of course you're at 95 millimeters. So for example, if you wanted to shoot, like if this is your subject and you wanted the waves in it, and maybe you should have just 105 millimeters on your 24-105, zoomed in as far as you could and shot this in the center, right? However, sometimes in editing, we find that our images completely change when we change the crop. And if I had my Lightroom up, I would show you versions where I changed the crop completely, even though my intention in the image was something different. When I got it back to editing, what really stuck out to me, I changed in the edit. No, it was supposed to be raw. No. You didn't do anything wrong. What I'm trying to say is something that can improve your photography and my photography is to think about what your intention is with the image when you take it, so that you have to do less editing. Now, that's not always going to happen. Sometimes we're in a hurry. Sometimes you put something in you don't even see something in the image, that kind of thing. No, dude, you don't, you haven't done anything wrong. You sending me the raw was good. I'm critiquing that the raw image isn't telling me what I'm supposed to look at. But that happens to myself and anybody else probably in the chat. Sounds good, Scram. So if we were to crop out the right side and try to get a little bit more of a focus here, really crop in. To me, this looks like, I think someone suggested cropping out the right, so I'm not trying to take credit for you. But this, I now have a lot more, I know what I'm trying to look at now. And so what I was trying to say is that we as photographers, with intention when we're shooting photos, should go out and try to shoot the frame as best as possible with that intention. And what I was saying before is because you sent me the raw photo, I didn't know what you wanted me to see. And then I was saying that I take photos plenty of times where I don't know what my viewer wants to see until I fix it. Yeah. And I assume that this kind of crop is probably just the limitation of the fact that you only have a 24-105. You couldn't switch to like a 200 if you wanted to capture these waves. But in terms of editing this, I'm probably not going to, just because, again, like you said, this is more of a snapshot. This isn't a, photo that you were trying to put in your portfolio or anything like that. if you wanted to, I think if you really, really were trying to force a photo out of this, probably some form of black and white might work. Just a high contrast between the waves and the rock. But overall, I feel like this is just more of a snapshot than anything else. So, okay. I'm going to go on to the next one. Thank you guys if you're just joining. You can send photos down below. Thank you everyone that just subscribed. I don't know. I got to fix... Is the alert box not working? Has anyone seen it? Oh, it is working. Okay, so I'm just not hearing it. So... Okay, you made me feel even worse for calling you out because you donated saying sorry, which makes me feel terrible. You did not have to do that, and I was quite genuinely just kidding. I just thought it was funny. Okay, cool. I'm glad. That's important to me. Realistically, I am blessed just to have you guys sitting here hanging out while I take photos. While we talk about photos. So it means a lot to me. That's all I really care about. So I appreciate the donations, but they are definitely not necessary. They might be in a few months, but right now I'm okay. If you guys see your image and you're in the chat, you can... Oh, the dog is she. You can probably see a tail. Oh, okay. Now they're up. Both of them are awake. Hopefully that doesn't get too annoying. If you see your image, 28 raws. Okay. That might have to be for next time. Yeah, Josh, that's fine. I'll try to get in here. If you see, okay, 15. I'll do 15 next, and I'm going to try to get Josh's images in here. You guys are sending me stuff. So if I don't get to your image this time, I'll do another. We'll be doing these probably every week. And I'll probably limit it to how many you guys send me, just because sometimes I don't know which ones you want me to look at, and it's hard for me to pick. Yeah, FBG, I received your images, and I mentioned you. I didn't know who you were, so I hadn't downloaded them yet. Okay. Let's do. Let me keep this. Let's do 15 first. This is a cool image. Where is this? Argentina? I feel like GeoGuessr are just trying to guess based off of what the landscape looks like. France. Okay, I'm way off. Okay. This is a cool image. It's interesting because mostly just because I just like the uniqueness of how the landscape looks. Yeah, Patagonia absolutely looks like this. That's why I thought this was Patagonia. Okay, we're going to work on this image next. And then I'm going to try to figure out or try to add some more, although there's quite a few people that want to see their images. So we'll do that. Now, I don't think this image is edited, but the only reason I'm going to say this is it already looks somewhat edited. It doesn't look as flat as normal. And I'm assuming, is this because on the XT, did you have like Velvia selected or something? That makes sense. Ryan, what do you need help with? Oh, I see. You were replacing the words. I'm catching up. Yeah. Oh, it's raw. Okay. Yeah, I see the RAF. It just looks. I've only shot a few photos on my X-T4, the camera I use for video. And sometimes the images just come out almost looking like I can post them. It's kind of crazy. So this is a hard image for me because I don't know what I want to do with it. And what I mean by that is, even though it qualifies, this is an image, and if you've been here the whole time, I've been saying this, is what do my eyes see? Like, what do my eyes go to? And there isn't really a subject in this image, and I think that's probably the weakest part, if I had to say something that was weak, is that there's no one thing that I'm trying to look at. However, when saying that, I think that some photos you're just meant to take everything in. But it depends on the photo, right? If you're trying to, there's a fine line between taking a photo that captures everything and taking a photo that captures everything, but it's not overwhelming to my eye. Yeah, Josh. I am a landscape photographer. However, if you sent me a photo of something non-landscape and it's something that I feel like I can talk about, I will. But preference is definitely landscapes because I don't feel like I have an expertise in anything else. So I think this image is really cool. But I'll be completely honest, and I would say I don't know what I would want to do to it. So I think that this tree here, if we're going to work on cropping this out and trying to really focus in on what we want here, it's probably something like this. If I had to guess. Not guess. If I had to figure out. Because now we're at least balancing this tree in the foreground with the mountains in the background. And we're kind of getting rid of a little bit of this whole part of the image isn't really doing anything. So I'm kind of cropping over to here to where the mountain starts. However, once doing this, I look at this image now, and as me, if I shot this photo, I would say, damn, I wish I had just stepped up. If I was going to end up making this tree more of the focus, I wish I had moved up some and put it more in the frame. I think that would have really helped this image overall. So some things we can do to it, to quick edits to really help are, let's not do that. Add medium contrast in. And again, a lot of the things I'm about to do are going to be different depending on your camera. So you can tell how blue things are getting because of the way Fuji's capture color. So that's going to be harder to balance in this image. We're going to have to do a little bit less than what I've done on the previous images. So I'm going to add a G&D here because I think the foreground is just a bit too bright. My eye is kind of leading there. Kind of want to balance the foreground with this background just a little bit. And again, because the middle of the image is the subject, I'm going to add just the faintest vignette here. Not very much. Okay, maybe more than I thought. Just a tiny bit. And then I'm going to add another radial filter. But this one's going to be super light because I just kind of want to brighten up this tree. Got invert selected, feather at 100. And I'm just going to bring up the highlights and the whites just a little bit, but I don't want it to look unnatural. And we can probably actually crop out a little bit more here. Something like this. Let's bring this over. Just trying to balance the tree with the mountains in the background. Well, I'm definitely excited to see the hippo. So, yeah, if I wanted to go 16, we'll check out 16 by 9 in a second. I think that right now my goal is to have some balance with this, some subject, because I think there is a potential here. I think the image looks cool. But if we're trying to get better, if we're trying to get better at not only shooting the shots but editing the shots, you have to look at an image and force yourself, okay, how can I make it better? And that's what I'm trying to do. Because I think the original image isn't bad, but I don't think it's something like I would post in my portfolio, for example. And I think we can learn from that, right? So talking about subject matter, instead of coming up to a landscape like this, the whole thing, and saying, wow, this is really beautiful, I'm just going to shoot the whole thing. Say, what is important in the shot? And to me, the most important things are the lake, the mountains with this mood in the background. That is some of the most important stuff. But if I want to capture the foreground, I need to have something important in there. And again, this is not to say that the first image was necessarily wrong. It's more talking about how do we improve to the next level. And those are the types of things that of like the best photographers that you see, the people that you follow that really inspire you, they're going to follow all of that stuff. I don't think out of all the landscape photographers that I follow that inspire me, I doubt there's any of them that are taking photos that I don't know what the subject is in the photo. Unless it's like an abstract. Yeah, I completely understand, Thomas. I don't think it's an easy photo to edit or really narrow down, to be honest. But we're working on it. I'm going to darken that just a little bit more. I think I'm going to actually darken the whole image a tad. And then bring up the whites in the image. It's going to add some more contrast. Let's just add contrast this way. I think we're pretty close. Let's bring the blues down. I'm checking out the blues up here. A little bit too strong. It's always weird editing different cameras because they're all going to affect things differently. Photographers that inspire me. I think my favorite modern photographer is Ted Gore. His work is... It's interesting because I think it's my inspiration has changed. His work is very much the style of work that is 80% real, 20% dream in terms of how he edits photos and manipulates them. He's definitely heavy-handed in the editing. But his color work is probably the thing I love the most. The colors in his image, the way he does balancing of colors is my favorite. Yeah, Ted Gore. He took like a 2-year hiatus. But he's probably my absolute favorite for that style. But recently I've been getting into more minimalist styles. Overall, I don't know what else to do this image right this second. I think our limits are based off of the original image, and we can only do so much in terms of, like, if we wanted to add lighting, if we wanted to change the overall feel of the image. I think this is pretty close. I like this crop. We can check the 16:9 by somebody suggested. Let's check what that looks like using the same kind of idea that I had. I think that looks pretty good too. I think overall the crop there will depend on what you're posting it for. So like if you want a desktop background, obviously 16:9 is going to be great. But if you're trying to post to Instagram or for print, I think the crop that we had previous is going to work a little bit better. Thomas, what do you think? I didn't do a whole lot to the image, but I think really narrowing down your focus is probably the most important part. I don't think that you need to actually do a whole lot of slider edits or anything like that. So while I'm waiting for you to respond, I'm going to try to get the next person's image ready. Let's see. Okay, so Josh sent me an image. I'm going to download that one, and then I'm going to work on some of the... Josh, if you're still here... Oh. Nope. That's me. Josh, for some reason it's saying I have to request access to the link you sent me. Just change whatever you sent me, change the sharing mode to anyone with the link can edit it. If you want to send me a different image, you can. It's up to you. Okay, so you don't recrop your images. So, well, not, I mean, cropping is completely up to you in terms of the intention of your image. But if I'm going to sit here and try to critique it and feel like, what can we do to improve it? I genuinely feel like this right part of the image doesn't really add a whole lot. I think I get almost the same feeling out of the image and more of an idea of what the focus and subject is with this crop. Whereas this, it leaves me a little bit wondering where I'm supposed to look a little bit more. I hope that helps. I actually really like this image. Maybe it's a bit too warm in the foreground, but you got to be careful because then we're changing the colors in the background. But it's possible that that's how that looked in real life. I always shoot at the default aspect 2:3. Although a lot of landscape photographer YouTubers are starting to shoot more square stuff while they're in the field. And it's something I've thought about, but a lot of times I can kind of imagine where I'm going to crop if I end up planning on cropping it. Yeah, anytime, Thomas. Okay, let's go to the next image. Let me scroll up here. 36, I think, is the next one. And this was sent by 𝐒𝐤𝐚𝐥𝐬. Sorry if I mispronounced that. I don't even know if that's just your first name or your full name. So I apologize. I'm assuming it's your first name. Juan, will do yours next. So this is a cool image. You did send me a JPEG, by the way, and I don't know if you have the RAW, but it looks like you're taking with a Panasonic, so maybe you only have JPEGs. So I'm just going to quickly do what I think would be really cool for this edit and just try to, maybe we want everything. I'm not going to do a whole lot because we're working with a JPEG, but I think this image is kind of cool with the layers of mood. I feel like even though this cloud in the foreground is nice, it's a little distracting. And that maybe we want something more like this. Okay. I'm not going to, well, we'll just use this one. I don't think I'm going to do too much of the image where I really need the raw, if that's okay with you. So we're going to add a decent amount of contrast here. Okay, thanks, Josh. I'll check it out in a second. I'm really adding contrast here. Nope, that's not what I want. So realistically, this is the kind of image where you really don't have to do a whole lot because the intention with this image is kind of to capture this moody landscape of this rolling fog through different parts of the image. And as much as I want to keep this fog in the bottom here in the image because it's really strong, I think it distracts too much. And I feel like I have to cut it out to about probably here. And I think that balances the photo a lot more. I'll probably bring this in. If you notice, we're cropping a lot. And I think that's because the first thing when I try to edit a photo or take a photo or anything is figure out what I'm trying to shoot. And this is definitely an image where the intention isn't about a specific subject. It's more about the whole landscape. And I know that goes against what we talked about in the last image, which was I cropped a lot of stuff out so that it had more of a subject. But sometimes with images like this, where it's more about the mood of the image or the colors in the image, it can work where we're not looking at a specific subject. It's more of an abstract rather than looking at something specific. I don't think I'd do too much more to this image. You have to be a little careful because I wouldn't mind adding a little bit more color into the top here, which I'm going to do, I think, using, that's too much. I also have to be careful in terms of I've never worked with this camera before. I just want a tiny bit more color here. So I think warming it up just ever so slightly and adding some reds in to kind of give it that purplish red. There we go. And then probably This is pretty close. Again, I didn't do a whole lot. Added some very strong contrast to the image. So yeah, I'm going to bring the blues down a little bit because I think those shadows are too blue. Which you could also, by the way, fix here. I could go to the shadows and warm them up. But you got to be extra careful with how much you're going to do that. Oh, good night, Unified. Unverified user. Unified user. I don't know why I wanted to say that. Thank you for joining in. Yeah, I think this is it. I don't think there's a whole lot more to do with the image. Obviously, I think if you had a subject, it would be this bridge here. But I almost don't even need that in the image. I think overall it looks pretty good. Pretty simple. Pretty simple edit there. Sometimes that's all you need, though. All right. Next is we're going to do 33 wands. Okay. This is cool. But see, this is the kind of image that I see that was shot with intention. And what I mean by that is, so if we took this person out of the image, it would pretty much not make a whole lot of sense. To make the bridge pop. I don't think so. What you could do if you really wanted to is maybe add a radial filter in the center of the image and just brighten up the center of the image just ever so slightly. But I think because there's so much haze here and fog, there's not really a really good way to make the bridge by itself pop. Here, really quick, I'll try a radial filter, but I don't think it's necessary. Because again, for me, when I look at this image, I'm not looking at the bridge like it's the focus. So you could technically do something like this, where it just brightens a little bit of the middle of the image. But I don't really think it's necessary. All right, let's go back to the other image. So this is what I'm talking about with intention, because this image exhibits a lot of stuff in photography that is with intention. And what I mean by that, I need to cough, hold on. What I mean by that is, normally in an image like this, if you have this much sky, it's a waste of space. But because of the way this image is balanced, it's creating negative space to balance out the bottom part of the image. And I think if you remove this person, so if I were to just, I don't know, put something over this, the image just wouldn't make sense because we'd have no subject. I'd have no idea of what I'm trying to look at. And I think by having the person here, it tells me that not only am I trying to balance the symmetry from the left to the right, I'm also trying to balance the symmetry from the top to the bottom. And that makes it where the top part of the image makes a whole lot more sense, having all this negative space. Now, that's not to say I'm not going to go in here and crop it a little bit, because I do think that the person is almost so small that it's hard to I think we can do a better job at making sure that that's the focus. And we definitely want them dead center of the frame. I don't think that's working. Let's balance it just a tad more. I think this looks good for that. So then we can do an edit. And I think this kind of image where you have a person, where you have a person like this, that looks like they're just walking through the frame. I don't know if that was intentional, like if you knew this person, Juan, or not. But the one thing you can do for this kind of image, I think that can be cool, is we're going to remove a decent amount of the saturation and we're going to stylize this image. Because again, this is less, to me, this is less landscapey and more, I don't know the better word for it, influencer, more influencer based, like an Instagram photo. Yeah, you could do that, Eeyore. Eeyore. I'm so bad at names. I'm sorry. I know it's not Eeyore. You told me that before. Okay. So we're going to stylize this using some color grading modules. But I think the first thing I want to do is do that same trick we've been doing with the radial filter, kind of creating our own light here to help us with that. I think this might end up looking really cool. Let's see. The light is coming from this direction. Something like that. Actually, you know what? I want it to come from the top because I actually think I want to darken this part. So I think something like this will be good. You have to give me a second on this one. This is going to be, it's going to take a second to get this right. Almost want like a spotlight. That looks good. But then I'm going to darken just this ever so slightly. Then we're going to go to our curves adjustments. Let's do the overall. Bring this away. That's not what I wanted. Nope. I'm going to bring this up some. Give that faded film look a little bit. Bring this down. And I want to add some red to the image. I know that sounds odd, but we're going to do it in the highlights. Just maybe orange. Let's just do basic orange. Something like this. Still feels a little off balance to me because whoever it is moving to the left. And bring up the shadows just a little bit. This is more definitely a high key kind of photo as well. And then add another radial here. This one's going to be non-inverted. We're just going to darken everything. That's too much. That's definitely too much. Need to be super subtle. And again, this is a stylized look. This is not a, I'm not trying to go for something that looks accurate to life here. We're going to go to our shadows. Put some blue just ever so lightly there. Then I'm actually going to desaturate the sky just a little bit. Probably just warm it up some, I think. Kind of want it to be more red. This is definitely a photo I'm playing around with. So I think something like this looks pretty cool. Don't think we actually want it to be super saturated. And I'm not so worried about how dark all of this stuff is. Again, trying to make it look really high contrast. Juan, I don't know. Oh, you deleted it. Okay. Okay. I think that's pretty much it for this photo. Just in terms of, you could play around a lot with colors. So something else I could do is boost up the reds in the highlights here. Something like this. And I think this before and after is pretty cool. To me, and again, I don't necessarily know if this would be the final edit, but taking this photo and really stylizing it for this look, I think is pretty cool. Yeah, there you go, Charlie. Juan, I don't know if I took this in a direction that you even care for, but this is definitely, some people like this look. I think it's pretty cool overall. I have time for probably one more edit and then I have to go. So if you sent me an image and I wasn't able to, a decent amount of people sent me more images. So what I will probably do is add these images to next time around, or I may just ask people to send me stuff again so that I have just a full list of who plans on actually being here. The next stream will probably be next week. I'll schedule it. I think I'm going to try to stream every Wednesday, but it won't necessarily be just a viewer editing stream. I don't know how often I'll do the viewer editing streams. It really just depends on if it's something people enjoy and how many photos I have to edit myself. So I have time for one more to look at. And I think I covered... let's take a look at one of David's. David, are you still here? And Josh, I know you sent me another photo, but I'll try to, if I can, look at one next time. Sorry, I ran out of time faster than I thought. So, okay. David, which one should we look at? Which one do you want me to look at? Okay. So this is your edit. And this is the original, yeah? I mean, this is the kind of photo that I don't think you can really do a whole lot to, because it's almost all there in the capture. But I think your crop's good. Obviously, aligning the horizon line is the most important thing. And then one thing... Oh, all good, Josh. Yeah, I think what I'm going to do is if you guys sent me some and I didn't get to them, I will probably just make a whole another folder, because as much as I want to add these to the still need to edit list, I don't want to add them and then you guys not be able to make it to the next stream. So I'll probably just cut it off. And if I get to it on the stream, I'll get to it. And then you guys can continue to send me more for the next stream. Okay. So one thing I'm noticing, and you may have noticed it, that I want to fix if I can, is I really want this reflection to be almost in the exact same plane as the sun. I know that's a really subtle detail, but I think what I'm going to do is use the guided, where the hell is it? Here it is. And I'm just going to use the two guided things here to pick out the edges of the sun. I'm going to have to fix that. And see if this looks right. It may not. That is not looking right. That's not looking right either. Normally this is for architecture. But basically what I want is to have the horizon line continue to be straight, but also have the suns match up perfectly. Just because I feel like the balance in this photo is really important. I think that is close. Yeah. Okay. And then we will... Now what's interesting here is as much as I want to cut out all of that, I don't want the reflection of the sun to be that close to the edge of the frame. So that, I will admit, is going to be difficult. But I know you talked about atmosphere. I really don't think you have to do a whole lot to this photo. I feel like a lot of it's already there. Because the intention with this photo is definitely more of an abstract. Something that's actually really interesting, I bet if you did this, I actually think I like this. Now, again, this is basically a completely different photo. But for some reason, I think I like this. And I would put the sun right in the middle. I think I like this more. Just this. But if we're trying, obviously I know the reflection was the intention. And something like this is what you were going for. But I mean, I really like this. This looks really cool to me. Mostly because I think the best parts of the images are all right here. And I think the weaker part of the image is in this area that has all this stuff, which is fine. You can barely see it. And obviously the reflection of the sun is cool. What's really strange to me though, balance-wise, is that all of the mood and fog is up here at the top, whereas the bottom is way more clear. Like you can clearly, it just feels like there's far less fog in this area. And I think that's kind of why I like this crop more. I don't know. I know that might not be what you want to hear, but I think that this image in my eyes, for me, is just a lot stronger. I don't know what anyone else thinks in the chat, but I just like that crop way more. And I would probably actually just, which has nothing to do with the mood and problems you were originally faced and why you sent me the image. But like if I was just take this and start playing around with some stuff, obviously you don't need less clarity. I'd probably bring the blacks down just a little bit, but then bring the shadows up just a little bit. And then probably cool it off some. It really, I mean, the cool thing about this image is it's really your intention. So if I want to make it a little bit more of red glow, I could do that. No, totally, David. I mean, again, this is coming from someone that's never been there. I wasn't there when you took the photo. I'm just looking at it strictly from which image do I like better. And personally, your intention when taking the photo was including the reflection and all of that stuff. But from like an abstract view and my personal preference, I think this looks, I like this more. I just think it looks pretty cool. And all the mood is up there. But again, in terms of the actual edit, I genuinely don't think there's a whole lot you need to do, even if you left it like this. I didn't do a whole lot. I think the before and after barely does anything. I darken the blacks a little bit so that, and that's, you could leave them more faded if you wanted to. And I changed the color balance a little bit, but I really don't think, a whole lot needs to be done. So, yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in. David, I hope that was an okay answer to your question or your photo. Yeah, I think that crop, I don't know. I feel like the bottom half of the image looks way less moody, and the top half of the image is more mysterious, like you said. And that to me draws my eye in more. Oh, anytime, Josh. Well, not anytime, but when I have time. I will be doing these more. I think not only are these fun for me, they really help me think outside the box when I have to answer questions to things I don't exactly know the answers to. There's been some tough questions. There's been some tough photos. I mean, I still struggle with some of the photos that I have. So. If you guys have any last questions, I think the next stream, I will absolutely stream next Wednesday, but I don't know when I'll do the next stream for submitted content. Yeah, I hope we get more people, Ryan. I think that I know it's kind of weird having live stream talking about this stuff, but I wish more other people did it. That's kind of why I'm doing it. So it feels, I don't know, more genuine. It's a lot of fun. And I thank you everyone for joining in or donating or submitting photos. I really appreciate it. Yuri, the way you tame high ISO is you have a really expensive Sony camera. Pretty much it. You can also median stack. That a lot of people do that for Astro stuff. All right, guys. Have a good night. Thank you again for tuning in, and thank you for submitting your photos. It was a lot of fun. I'll see you later.